Thanks for tuning in, everyone. The power of persistence. Let's go. Persistence. Any worthwhile goal in this life is most likely going to take a ton of this rare attribute. Though that might sound pretty obvious to most, very few actually lack the real persistence needed to make big goals turn into a reality. Chasing dreams and listing big life-changing goals seems pretty fun in the beginning on paper, but any seasoned dreamer will tell you that the amount of time and energy required to make them actually happen is often stacked miles higher than they originally thought. When most people reach these inevitable plateaus along their journey, they give up, realizing things will be much tougher than they first anticipated, and decide to take an easier route. Bear in mind, these are the ones who have actually dared to chase their dreams in the first place. Many might criticize those who give up on their dreams, but in all honesty, I can totally understand it. Of course, I encourage people to follow their passions, but I can't lie, it isn't easy, not by a long shot. I totally get why only a few succeed, but anyone who has made it to the other side will tell you that you need courage, imagination, and a shitload of persistence. I'd like to expand on this by telling you the story of the 8 broke men. In a faraway land on the outskirts of the Persian Gulf, 16 broke men gathered around as one of the village messengers spoke with them. He mentioned a huge pile of abandoned jewels and gold coins, equating to a small fortune on the other side of the desert. He had its location on a small map, given to him by a worthy source. Half of the men instantly lost interest, as they said the other side of the desert was hundreds of miles away and was totally impossible to reach. The remaining 8 said they would go. They gathered 8 camels and as much food and water as possible. Once arrived, they would split the treasure between them. The leader was a man named Eli, who held onto the map. He was good with directions and had travelled much more than the other men. They set off at noon in high spirits, excited about returning with their riches and boasting about what fine purchases they would make once back. 100 miles into the journey, the heat started to get to them. 3 of the men turned around and said they wanted to head back, as the temperature was becoming too much for them to bear. 200 miles in, another 3 turned back. They were tired, exhausted, and started to have doubts about whether or not this treasure was even real. The last 2 men carried on for another 100 miles, until the other man finally gave up, leaving Eli all by himself. Eli carried on alone, but strong. He was determined to make it to the treasure, as he had been broke for most of his life, and had less clothes, monies, and luxuries as the others. He kept saying to himself, just over this next hill of sand, I will see the cave where the treasure lies. He started running low on water and food, but carried on anyway. The destination turned out to be much further than he originally thought, and he began to get concerned, as he was so far from any other villages. He carried on with his mantra over endless hills of sand until his camel passed out from exhaustion and died soon after. He now had no choice but to carry on by foot, with what little water he had left. He walked and walked and walked, until he dropped to his knees with exhaustion. He lay down on the sand, scorched and severely dehydrated. As he started losing consciousness, he began thinking to himself, this is it, this is the end. Barely an hour later, 2 men on camels walked over next to Eli and observed him lying in the sand. They picked him up and gave him plenty of water and food, restoring him back up to full health. They set up camp for the night and talked around a fire. Eli explained his journey to the other men and the treasure that awaited. The men agreed to help him finish his journey if he agreed to split the bounty with them. They carried on for another 3 days until they finally got there. They entered the cave and found more treasure than they could carry. They split it 3 ways and gave Eli another camel with new directions for a safer trip back. Several days later, Eli returned home with the treasure. He kept a hefty sum for himself, but shared much of it with the others in the village. Not only did he return rich, but he now had a reputation as a hero, with courage and bravery. He was known around the village, and his life changed forever. In the end, the journey wasn't just about the treasure Eli sought, but the person he became along his adventure, and the life he had earned once returned home. Persistence may sound like an easy trait to practice, but when the going gets tough, most people bail. It is during the challenging periods of endurance when we need persistence the very most. It takes great bravery to carry on in the face of adversity, but fortune favours the brave, and with a clear idea of what you want combined with this rare trait, you can succeed at just about any goal your heart desires. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next video.